Over the last few weeks, the whole world has just turned upside down. And if you're a healthcare business owner where you normally see patients, everything has changed, and it's changed literally overnight. And for a lot of you, you will have stopped seeing the large volumes of patients that you normally see because, you know, this is a hands-on thing. Healthcare, podiatry, foot health practitioners, whatever it is, you deal with clients on a hands-on basis. Now, because of everything going on, you can't do that except for an emergency, which means that now's the time to drastically turn around and rethink your business model. And one of the things which I've been talking about a huge amount with people recently is around that idea of online consultations. Now, being the tech fan that I am, I love the idea of online consultations. That idea that you can communicate with people not just in the same room as you, but halfway around the world. And if you're really good at the services you provide, why wouldn't you want to be treating people all over the world? But what I do realise is that for a lot of people, that is a massive, massive jump in terms of going from comfort to outside of their comfort zone. A lot of people in the industry, in the healthcare industry, don't really understand technology and don't feel comfortable with using it because we're all caring, hands-on people. So there are some certain things that you would need to consider if you're going to go down the route of online consultations. And what I wanted to do was just really go through those things. I wanted to be able to show you how you can set up online consultations in a really simple form and how you can maybe up it to the next level if that serves you. There are really easy ways of doing this. There are some more complex ways of doing this, and there's kind of a sweet spot in the middle for you to get started. The key thing with these things, though, is if you want to do online consultations, you really just need to think about getting started. And I want you to consider this in terms of what's the patient's journey like? How do they go from finding you through to booking you, through to having the online consultation, and what happens afterwards? That whole customer experience and that whole customer journey. But before we discuss that, I'm going to talk to you very quickly about equipment. So at the base level, at the very, very simple level, you probably already have in your possession the thing which you can use for video consultations. And that's one of these, a smartphone. These things are ubiquitous, they are everywhere, and they all have that capability to be able to do video calls and video consultations. And you couple that with a tripod, just for support and stability, you've already got a system which you can use from today if you choose to. If, however, you want to go to the next level, there is some other equipment which I recommend. So if you're thinking of taking that to the next level, this is where you start to use computers, so a PC or a Mac, and laptops. Now they all usually, certainly the modern ones, have a built-in webcam. But to be honest, the quality isn't brilliant on a lot of those. And this is why I would recommend getting yourself an external webcam, something which is higher definition, which means that when you're having that consultation and that communication, you're able to talk to people easier, they can see you much easier, you can demonstrate things easier, and also the flip side is you can see what's going on with their problems as well in order to provide that assessment. You also need to be considering sound quality as well, and one of the things I would suggest is either a pair of wired headphones which plugs in, or a headset, or some form of microphone like a snowball microphone which allows you to have really crisp, clear audio and also to be able to hear what the other person's saying very, very clearly too. But to be honest, the equipment's the easy part. You know, the equipment is the simple part. It's all the other processes that you need to consider alongside that journey which are probably the most important. So the next thing we need to consider really is software. And if you are using your smartphone, you already have software on here which will help. If you have an iPhone, you have FaceTime. If you have WhatsApp or you have Messenger, you already have video capabilities within there. And while they're very, very easy to use, sometimes the quality can be reduced a little. but also you don't have the ability to record and you don't have the ability to see what's going on with that big screen. And while you can use that, for the most part, I would suggest that you go down the PC or laptop route with a webcam. And when you start going down that route, that's when you start to get pieces of software like Zoom. I use Zoom a huge amount for my video consultations and for my client calls. Zoom is a piece of software you download from the internet, and it is an encrypted, end-to-end encrypted, very secure video conferencing system. And at the free end, and it comes as a free piece of software, you have the ability to have a conversation with two people. When you start to go down the paid route, you then get the options to be able to record it, to have multiple people on a call, which is really good if you're considering doing group trainings. But you also get some other features as well, which you don't get on the free version. Saying that, the free version is great just to start off with those consultations. But if you're looking to record those consultations as well, that's where you need to be thinking about paying for it further down the line. The other thing to consider is if you're on a laptop or you're on a PC, such as one I have in my room here, in my office here, it's a much bigger screen, which means you can see things a lot more clearly. And that's one of the distinct advantages of Zoom on a computer over using your smartphone. So the hardware and the software bit's pretty easy. You know, it's fairly simple to get hold of those things. And while there is a learning curve on Zoom, it's not a massive learning curve and you'll soon take to it very quickly. The question is, what do we do in terms of getting people to come along to these consultations? What are the processes we need to follow? So the first thing is you need a booking system. You need a way of being able to schedule people in to come along and have these calls with you. Now, if you're already using an electronic patient record system, something like Clinico, you will already have the ability to book people in online. Some of them will also have the ability to take payments as well, which we'll talk about in a moment. But if you already have a diary system in place, then you can continue to use that without any problem at all. If you don't have one, and this is your first kind of dive into that area, you can look at using things like Clinico or sports injury fixes systems or the Rushcliffe type stuff. Any of those are absolutely fine. But it's also okay to use a paper-based diary and book people in on the phone. That is not an issue. If that's a system which you use and works for you, then go for it. The benefits of having an electronic system is that people can book in at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, or they can book in other time zones, and you don't have to worry about taking those calls and trying to marry up a time in order to speak to them. But having that diary system to book people in is essential. The next piece of the puzzle is payments. How do you take payments for these things? When you're in clinic, you're used to people coming in and tapping their card or inserting their card or paying you cash or whatever system you use. But there are other ways in which you have to do this online. That could be as simple as a bank transfer by giving out your bank details and getting people to pay. Or you could use an automated system such as Stripe or PayPal, where you actually give people a link and they go along and they pay via that link. The great thing about that is it's a really good audit trail. The other thing to consider is if you have a credit card terminal or a debit card terminal, what you can use is you can often use that as a remote card payment as well. Now, while giving people your bank details and Stripe and PayPal are pretty automated in that you send a link out and they do the work, having to marry up a time to have that conversation, take a remote payment on a credit card terminal might be a little bit of a problem. But it really depends on how you want to play that. But they are probably the main options which you want to consider at the moment. The great thing about an automated system is that it's automated, that once someone clicks a button that they want to have a conversation with you and want to have that consultation, every step of the way is automated. The booking in, the payment, the links going out, all the information they need to know before the assessment. And certainly I would be suggesting at the moment that if you can automate a huge amount of it, spend the time doing that. But it's not essential. So what exactly does one of these consultations look like? Well, to be fair, it's no different to an in-person consultation, apart from the fact that you're not in the same room. You're still going to go through the same steps and the same procedures in order to get to that point. You're still going to need your privacy policy signing, which can be done electronically. You're still going to give them your terms and conditions. You're still going to go through an assessment of their problems and find out exactly what the issue is. And you're going to probably get them as well to show you by the use of their camera, or at least tell you exactly what the history is. And you're then going to provide a diagnosis and look at management. Now, we are limited on the management we can do via a virtual system. A lot of the hands-on stuff, obviously, we cannot do, but we can direct people very, very simply towards a lot of self-care stuff. Things like exercises, certain bits of self-treatment. We can even triage people at the moment to say, you know, actually, you've got a bit of a problem which does need to be seen in person. This is what I would recommend we do next. But that whole process is very, very similar. At the end of the consultation, you have the ability to take the file, to take the consultation recording and email it out to them, to actually put it in a place where they can access it to go through that information. Then you can follow up as well online with your consultations. But that whole process doesn't have to be any different to an in-person consultation. So what other things do we need to be thinking about here? Well, for some of you, it will be a complete step change in what you're used to. For some of you, it will be a very, very small change. For some of you, you may already be doing these kind of things already. But there's certain things which you need to really look at to make sure that it is working as well as it could do. The first thing really is around your paperwork and documentation. You've got to make sure that your privacy policy, your data protection policy, and all of the GDPR stuff is exactly in place as it should be, and then it covers online consultations. You're going to be sending a lot of stuff around electronically, and you need to make sure that your systems are set up to do that. That's really, really important. The next thing you need to consider is your insurance. Just making sure that your insurance covers you for online consultations and treatment. I understand that a lot of the insurance companies at the moment still aren't paying for online consultations, so it becomes a self-pay situation for a lot of clients. But in terms of your professional indemnity and your professional insurance, you need to make sure that you're covered to provide those things. There are some providers out there who are looking at doing this specifically now, and certainly if your insurance doesn't cover you, that's something you need to get sorted if you want to go down this route. The next thing you need to consider is really the environment you do the consultations in. You want to make sure that you've got good light, whether it be from a window or artificial light. You want to make sure that there's nobody able to listen in, so it's a very secure and private environment. And I would certainly be looking at making sure you have no things like Alexas or other kind of digital assistants actually switched on, because they have the ability to actually listen in and they're waiting for the keyword to activate them. So make sure you're in a room either with those not in, or they are switched off. And probably one of the final things to consider is pricing. And I've been asked this question quite a lot. You know, how much do I charge for online consultations? Now, really that comes down to you as the individual. You know, what's your service worth to you? What's good value for you? I would argue that just having somebody in the clinic with you isn't the value in the consultation. The value in the consultation is in your knowledge and your experience and your order to diagnose, work out what the problem is, and provide a solution which is going to get the patient where they want to be. And with that in mind, that means that your consultation online, digitally, is worth exactly the same amount as it would be if it was in person. Now, obviously, it's up to you to decide how you want to play that. Your overheads will be different, but I would say that it's still worth exactly the same amount. So I hope that helps. I hope that can give you some clarity on online consultations. It can give you some guidance to get started today or tomorrow, whenever you're ready. Really, the key things are, don't treat it differently to any other consultation. You're still having a conversation with somebody, you're still looking at their expectations, and you're still working out how you're going to sort their problem out for them. Yes, there's some technical changes. Yes, there's some paperwork changes and privacy policy changes. And yes, it's a completely different way of working. But if you can still provide them with immense value, sort the problems out for them, and be personal in the process, you will find that this is going to be a great way of working in the future. And a lot of businesses now are starting to turn to online consultations out of necessity. But I know in the future, this is going to be part of a normal clinical process. We're going to have somewhere in our menu of services, online consultations and assessment. It's just whether you decide to embrace it now or whether you decide to embrace it further down the line. And really the choice is yours. But if you've got any questions on this, you know where I am. Come and find me. Happy to help in any way I can.